Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man, and today we're taking a look at the new Knights Detachments. This video is sponsored by CMO Games. More on that later. Grotmas calendar, day 9. Silent Knights and Unholy Knights. After an especially pious day in the Grotmas calendar yesterday, we returned to one of the true messages of the season. Gigantic armored machines, knocking lumps out of one another in the iconoclast fiefdom and the Questoris Forge Pack detachments. See if you can guess who's been naughty and who's been nice just from the names. Alright, so we have a new detachment for the Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights. Iconoclast fiefdom. When the fallen nobles of the iconoclast houses go to war, they are followed by teeming masses of mutants, cultists, and heretic soldiers. These odd mortals offer chanted prayers to those towering beacons of corruption, worshipping them as mechanical idols to the dark gods. Rushing forward around clawed feet, these accursed hordes scream battle cries and sing their devotion as they hurl themselves at the foe. As the death count escalates, the fallen nobles rejoice in bloodshed, the warp-twisted mechanisms of their thrones mechanicum feeding upon the sacrifice of their thralls and infusing pilots and steed with ever greater infernal might. With the wretched thralls rule, you'll now be able to bring a number of damned units from the Codex Chaos Space Marines. The dreaded Master's Detachment rule confers bonuses to allow your cultists and knights to benefit from one another. Each Chaos Knight in the army can make a dark sacrifice when it is selected to shoot or fight, trading the worthless lives of its followers for boons from the gods. Worthless Chattel builds on this theme. You may ignore a damned unit in combat when selecting targets for ranged weapons. This stratagem is great for pinning down enemies with cultists even as the mighty Chaos Knights sustain their very existence. Alright, very cool. So let's jump into the new Chaos Knights detachment. Alright, so we have the Iconoclast Fiefdom. And keep in mind that we're still going to have the Chaos Knights army rule. We're just trading out the existing detachment for the new one. So detachment rule, Dreaded Masters. Titanic Chaos Knights units from your army have the following abilities. Dread Tyrant's Aura. While the friendly damned unit is within 9 inches of this unit, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, you can reroll a hit roll of 1 and you can reroll a wound roll of 1. So your Titanic Knights are going to have a 9-inch aura that grants reroll hits and wounds of 1 to all of your damned units. Dark Sacrifice. Each time a Chaos Knights unit with this ability is selected to shoot or fight, it can make a Dark Sacrifice. If it does, select one damned unit within 6 inches. That damned unit must make a leadership test. If passed, destroy D3 models in the damned unit. If failed, destroy a D3 plus 3 models in the damned unit. In either case, select one of the following abilities for your Chaos Knights unit's weapons to have until the end of the phase. Lethal hits or sustain hits 1. So each time one of your Chaos Knights is selected to shoot or fight, you're going to take a leadership test with a damned unit within 6 inches. If you pass it, they're going to take a D3 casualties. If you pass it, they're going to take a D3 casualties. If you fail it, they're going to take a D3 plus 6. So you're basically going to kill somewhere in between 1 and 6 of your damned models, which are essentially cultists, and then you're going to gain lethal hits and sustain hits. So realistically, this detachment is going to benefit massively the big Chaos Knights and not nearly as much the small Chaos Knights. Because if you're going to be taking 1 to 6 casualties per time you activate this ability, and you can do it in the shooting and fight phase in order to gain these benefits, you're not going to sustainably be able to do it with like 10 armigers, as where you can do it with some of the bigger knights, gain a ton of bonuses to like their mass amounts of shooting or mass amounts of combat attacks. And then the Wretch Trolls ability is what's going to allow you to take damned models. You can include damned units in your army, see Codex Chaos Space Marines. The combined points cost of those units depends on the battle size. So Incursion up to 250 points, Strike Force up to 500 points, and Onslaught up to 750 points. No damned models from your army can be your Warlord. Alright, so your typical 2,000 point game, you're going to be able to take 500 points worth of damned units. And your damned units are basically going to be like the Traitor Enforcer, Cultist Mobs, Accursed Cultists, Dark Commune, Traitor Guard, Felgor Ravagers, basically all of like the cult style models. So a Cultist unit is 10 models and it's 50 points. It's also a battle line, so you could take like 300 points worth of Cultists. That would give you 60 Cultists. And then each time you activate your Dark Sacrifice ability, you're going to be losing like roughly 2 cultists. On a good roll, you might only lose 1. On a bad roll, you might lose 6. And then keep in mind, if you're going to want to activate this in multiple phases on multiple nights, it's realistic to think that you could be losing like 10 cultists per turn on the Dark Sacrifice. So you still kind of want to keep your cultists safe. It's going to give you some ability to do like actions and not have to waste like a big knight to do some kind of action. This is going to fill a pretty big gap for Chaos Knights, as something like Nurglings that's cheap can't do actions because they don't have any OC, but then things like Plague Bearers or Demonettes. So it's still an expensive unit doing an action, but it's better than doing it with like a War Dog. But if you can do actions with something like Cultists, and then in the meantime you're just sacrificing them away, it's actually pretty good. Alright, and then we have our Enhancements. Profane Altar, 20 points. Chaos Knights model only. Each time the bearer makes a dark sacrifice, the maximum number of models that is destroyed in the selected damned unit, 3 if it is passed, or 6 if it has failed, but until the end of the phase, the bearer's weapons have both lethal hits and sustained hits. Okay, so very cool. You're basically going to get the benefit of both lethal and sustained hits, but you're going to just max out your sacrifice roll. So if you pass the leadership test, 3 guys die, but if you fail the leadership test, 6 guys die. But potentially having one of your shooting knights have lethal hits and sustained hits, or one of your combat knights having lethal hits and sustained hits, we're talking about a massive volume of attacks that are getting the benefit of these 2 abilities. So very cool. And obviously, because your benefits are going on a single model, the more volume of attacks that you have, or the more powerful attacks you have, the more this benefits you. So again, this is really incentivizing you to take the big knights. Pave the Way, 15 points. Chaos Knights model only. At the start of the declare battle formation step, you can select up to 3 damned units from your army. The selective units have the Scout 6 ability. Alright, so you're going to put this enhancement on one of your Chaos Knights, and then he's going to grant the Scout 6 ability to 3 of your damned units, allowing you to get a little bit further up the board before the game starts. So the Knights are already pretty quick on their own. I would imagine the main reason you're going to be doing this is so that you can put all of your Chaos Knights up on the front line as close as possible to get your enemy, and then scout forward with these little guys to essentially like block them from being tied up in combat, or essentially as a screen. Tyrant's Banner, 5 points. Chaos Knights model only. Each time the bearer makes a dark sacrifice, select one visible damned unit to take a leadership test instead of a damned unit within 6. Alright, so it's going to get rid of the restriction for the damned unit having to be within 6 inches of your Chaos Knight when you make your dark sacrifice roll. Instead, it just has to be visible. So pretty good, especially only for 5 points. And then we have Diabolic Resilience, Chaos Knights model only. The bearer has a Feel No Pain 6+ ability and can ignore any and all modifiers to its move characteristic and or to any advance or charge rolls made for it. Alright, so Feel No Pain 6+, definitely good on a 22 or more wound model. And then you can ignore any and all modifiers to move, advance, and charge rolls made for that unit. So not bad enhancements. Obviously the best one is to be able to get lethal hits and sustained hits, but it also has a drawback. Now a quick word from today's sponsor, CMO Games. CMO Games carries a full range of Games Workshop products including miniatures, paint, terrain, tools, and more. They take pre-orders for most Games Workshop new releases as early as possible, usually 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. CMO Games offers 15% off of MSRP for most all Games Workshop products and offer fast free shipping to the continental United States on orders over $50. Most orders ship out within 24 hours. You know their customer service is top-notch as they've been selling games online for over 20 years. Use the affiliate link below and let them know that Warhammer Man sent you. Alright, and then we have our 6 new stratagems. Avenge the Masters. 1 command point when any phase. Target 1 Chaos Knights unit from your army that was destroyed. You can use this stratagem on that unit even though it was just destroyed. Effect: until the end of the battle, that enemy unit that destroyed your unit is marked. Each time the damn model from your army makes an attack that targets a marked unit, the attack has a lethal hits ability. Alright, so they kill one of your Chaos Knights, you spend a command point, and then all of your damned units get lethal hits against that unit until the end of the game. So the damned units are not going to be doing much of your killing, and then obviously in order to trigger the strat, you have to spend a command point, and one of your Chaos Knights has to have already died, so not particularly useful. Wretched Masses, 2 command points, any phase. Target 1 damned unit excluding a cursed cultist from your army that was destroyed. You can use this stratagem on that unit even though it was just destroyed. Effect: add a new unit to your army identical to the destroyed unit. In strategic reserves, at its starting strength and with all of its wounds remaining. Restrictions: you can only use this stratagem once per battle. This stratagem cannot be used to return destroyed character units to attached units. Alright, so one of your damned units gets destroyed. You can't use this on a cursed cultist, and you can't use it on characters. You spend 2 command points, and then you get a replacement unit. So if you have like a cultist mob of 20 models, you're essentially getting a free 100-point unit to come back into your army. Not bad reinforcements. And then we have Unrestrained Rage, 1 command point. Your movement phase just after a Chaos Knight unit from your army advances or falls back. Target that unit. Effect: until the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it advanced or fell back. Alright, so pretty powerful. Being able to advance and shoot or advance and charge with one of your Chaos Knights is definitely good, but more importantly, you can now fall back and then either charge or shoot with that unit, and that is very strong, as that's going to stop your opponent from being able to tie up your unit or allow you to leave a combat that's less than optimal and then just do whatever you want. And then we have Worthless Chattel, 1 command point. Your shooting phase, 1 damned unit from your army. Effect: until the end of the phase, enemy units are not considered to be within engagement range of your unit for the purposes of selecting targets for ranged weapons. Until the end of the phase, each time an enemy unit loses a wound, while that model's unit is within engagement range of your unit, roll a d6 on a 4-up. 1 model from your unit is destroyed after the attacking unit has finished making its attacks. Alright, so you're essentially going to be able to target a unit that's in combat with one of your damned units with shooting attacks. Alright, so this is an interesting stratagem. The idea around it is to be able to get around not being able to target one of your opponent's units because it's locked in combat with one of your damned units. But realistically, your damned unit could just fall back and then you could shoot it. But let's say hypothetically you don't, you just leave your damned unit in combat. You shoot at your opponent's unit, and then each time that unit loses a wound, one of your damned units dies. The problem is if you're shooting something like a multi-damage weapon, you might only be killing a single model, but you're not losing a single model on a 4-up in return. You're losing a model on a 4-up for each wound you did to that unit. You kill a couple of their Terminators by doing like 8 damage to them. You're going to roll a 4-up for each wound that your opponent's unit lost, and then you're going to lose one of your models. So you do 8 damage to them, kill 2 Terminators, and then you lose like 4 of your cultists. So realistically, you probably would have been better off just falling back. So I'm just not sure like what the actual purpose of this strat is. I'm sure there's some like super specific situation where you don't want to fall back with your unit and there's some benefit from it, but I'm just not sure what that is. Alright, and then next we have Soul Hunger. 1 command point. Your fight phase just after a Chaos Knight unit from your army has fought. Target that Chaos Knight unit. Effect: if 1 or more models were destroyed as a result of those attacks, your unit regains up to a D3 lost wounds. If 1 or more models from a battle shock unit were destroyed as a result of those attacks, your unit regains a D3 plus 2 lost wounds instead. So you fight in combat, you kill a model, you trigger the strat for 1 command point, you gain back 1 to 3 wounds. If that unit was battle shocked, instead you're going to gain back 3 to 5 wounds. So a pretty good way to heal up one of your big knights or small knights potentially. Anytime you have a unit that's hard to damage and then you can put wounds back on it, that's a really nice benefit. And then last but not least, we have Preserve the Idols. 1 command point. When your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit ends a normal move, advance, or fallback move. Target 1 Chaos Knights unit from your army that is within 9 inches of that enemy unit. Effect: select 1 damn unit from your army that is not battle shocked, not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, and is within 6 inches of your damned unit. That damned unit can make a normal move of up to 6 inches, but it must end its move closer to the enemy unit than when it started the move. So when your opponent ends one of these moves within 9 inches of one of your Chaos Knights models, this can be triggered for 1 command point, and then you can select a damned unit that's within 6, and then you can make a normal move of up to 6 with that damned unit. So presumably you could use this to like screen out your knight so they can't charge you, get onto an objective, or something along those lines. Again, it's very situational. It requires them to move within 9 of your Chaos Knight to trigger it. It requires a damned unit to be within 6, and then also that damned unit needs to be able to do something useful with the 6-inch move from this trigger. And then all that only costs you 1 command point. So again, very situational. Okay, so that is the Iconoclast Fiefdom. I think overall this is an interesting detachment. It's definitely not amazing. It's going to allow you to put damned units in with your Chaos Knights army. So that is definitely really good. The ability to take lethal and sustained hits on a big knight is going to be very powerful. And then the Profane Altar allowing you to have both lethal and sustained hits is absolutely epic. The best stratagem is the one that's going to allow you to recycle one of your cultist units. You're only going to be able to do that once per game, but it costs 2 command points. Being able to fall back, advance, shoot, and charge is definitely a very powerful stratagem. Being able to heal when you kill something is definitely a powerful stratagem. I think this definitely has some play. The existing Chaos Knights detachment is not particularly amazing, but it does have 2 important strats that are not in this detachment. The first one is allowing you to pick 1 of your big knights or 2 of your small knights, and then move through enemy models and terrain as if they're not there. You can also do that in the move phase and the charge phase, which is extremely powerful. And then you also have Diabolic Bulwark, which is very important, especially if you're taking big knights. That's going to let you have a 4-up invulnerable save from shooting instead of your typical 5-up save. So the fact that this one has you focusing on taking big knights, but then doesn't have the stratagem to give one of them a 4-up invulnerable save is definitely going to be a weakness. And then also not letting you move through intervening models is definitely a weakness. So it definitely has some pluses and some minuses. I think it's a pretty cool detachment. I definitely think it could see some play as the existing detachment is just not all that great. But I think realistically, the massive differentiating factor between the Chaos Knights and the Imperial Knights is that the Chaos Knights army rule is not nearly as good as the Imperial Knights army rule. And then the massive benefit that the Chaos Knight existing faction has over the Imperial Knights is that they have the ability to take a bunch of war dogs and they have a bunch of versatility. So this detachment is designed specifically for the big knights, and while you could still use it alongside war dogs and take a bunch of cultists and stuff like that, the majority of the benefits you're going to be getting from this are not going to be nearly as good on war dogs as they are in a couple big chunky models. So I think it's a good detachment. It's definitely fun. It's definitely super thematic, but I'm not sure it's even worth trading off the other detachment for. So let me know what you think of this new detachment. Always like to hear back from you guys in the comments. As always, special thanks to CMO Games for sponsoring the channel. Check out the link in the description to save 15% on most Games Workshop products. And make sure to tell them that Warhammer Man sent you. Warhammer Man Studios, I'm Warhammer Man. And as somebody that plays Chaos Knights regularly, I definitely like what this brings to the game. And I think it's going to add some diversity to what Chaos Knights we see on the battlefield. And I'm out of here.